Hey all, welcome to another episode of What's Your Next? And today, for those of you who have been following us along, we're going back to the FDD, the Franchise Disclosure Document today, and we're covering the granddaddy of them all of items, which is item 19. We're going to learn what is item 19, why is it important, and we're going to give you some advice on how to follow up on item 19 if you're evaluating a franchise. So thank you for joining us today.
Welcome to What's Your Next? This is the go-to podcast for aspiring business owners who want to get to the next level, escape the rat race, and give their middle finger to the corporate 9-to-5. If you want financial freedom, work-life balance, and the business of your dreams, you're in the right place. Dave and Stacy Riska, husband-wife franchising duo, openly share their successes, failures, and lessons learned in franchising, business ownership, and working with your spouse.
And we'll just start right off here today, Stacy. Let's just roll right into this. So why don't you first off give a kind of an overview for our listeners, our next level crew. What is the item 19 from a 10,000 foot view?
Item 19, you're right, Dave. It's the biggie, it's the big kahuna. Item 19 is financial performance representations. And this answers the question that every single candidate asks us, which is,
how much can I make?
How much money can I make? Exactly. Item 19 covers the revenue side of the equation.
All right, awesome. Well, that was a great, concise overview of that. And you're right. The most often asked question we get when talking to candidates and evaluating a franchise is, how much money can I make? And that's why item 19 is very important, that you understand what it is, where it is, and what it means. So let's talk about overall, what is item 19? What does it cover?
All right, so when a candidate starts looking at the item 19 of the FDD, again, this is the financial representations. And here's the thing. Every single franchise that you look at, it's going to be presented differently. There's not a one set format. So that's why you really need to understand what it covers. And what it covers is how franchisees in that system are making money. It's not a guarantee that you're going to make that money, but it is a representation of how the franchisees in that system are making money. Dave and I, we view that as a real positive, because what other business model do you get to dive deep and really understand the numbers before you make a decision, right, Dave?
Oh, absolutely. When you're evaluating businesses, let's just say you're looking for an existing business out there today, and you want to try to figure out revenues, expenses, so on and so forth, so you can make a decision. Well, that information is not that easy to find. It's very difficult, and it's not overseen by anybody, that information, meaning that there's no governing body that says whether, that information is even partially correct. So in the franchise model, there's the item 19 that is overseen by the FTC, and the FTC makes sure that if they're going to include this in their item 19, that the numbers have to be substantiated by the actual performance of some of the franchises that they're including in those numbers.
Right. So Dave, you bring up a really great point. These are not projections. These are not estimates. These are real life numbers, what franchisees in the system are doing. So you're going to want to dive a little deeper and understand what is being presented, how is it being presented, is it certain group of franchisees, is it all franchisees? And every FDD that you look at will present that information in a different way.
Right. So Stacey, that's an awesome point. It leads us right into our next point here is item 19 a mandatory item in a franchise disclosure document?
Is the item 19 mandatory? And the answer is no. Many franchisees don't have an item 19. And there really could be different reasons for that. For example, the franchise that Dave and I selected actually did not have an FDD. Dave, you want to explain why that would be?
Well, I'm not sure why they didn't really have an FDD. Well, first off, it wasn't called the FDD back when we actually evaluated our franchise. It was called the Uniform Disclosure Document.
UFOC.
UFOC, yeah. Right. Yeah, UFOC. That's how many years ago it was. And one of the reasons why they may not have an FDD, item 19, is their emerging brand. They don't have enough information to feel comfortable enough to present it in writing in a document. So that would be one reason. There are many other reasons why they might not report. Business opportunities generally do not have an FDD. They're not required to report. And some franchises, it's just difficult for them to really evaluate fairly what these numbers might look like, meaning it's a cash-based business and maybe they're not, it's hard to say if they're all reporting and they don't have a register, so it's hard to gather the information. That's some of what we ran into with our franchise, is that, being that it was a events-based model, that many of the owner-operators out there didn't, it was hard for them to give you concrete numbers for the franchise to feel confident enough to put it in an FDD item 19.
Right. Exactly. In our case, they didn't have an item 19 because it was a cash-based business. You didn't have to report your sales, so there was no way for the franchise to really know and accurately report that information. What I will say is that almost across the board, Dave and I, we really only recommend that our candidates explore FDDs and franchises that do have an item 19. Especially if you don't have prior business experience, you want to know going in, what will those numbers kind of look like? Because as you build a pro forma and a business plan, you need some real life data to make those decisions.
Right. And I got some good news for you. Not related to that item 19 really, but we have an ROI calculator on our website. This could be used to evaluate any franchise or business opportunity if you can accumulate the correct information that can give you some idea of what your return on investment might look like. It's the return on investment calculator. You can find it on our website. Plug in the numbers and it can give you some information to what that franchise might look like. In the FDD, in a lot of cases, they'll give you the numbers, but they really don't give you the net result of those numbers. You have to kind of figure it out on your own. So that's why I mentioned that here. So let's move on to the next area of the item 19, and that is, what exactly is included in the item 19, Stacy?
All right. Well, as we've been talking about, when you look at different franchise concepts, every franchise can decide how they want to present information in the item 19. But hopefully you'll get to see revenue numbers, gross profits, net profits, and expenses. So think of it as a P&L, although you may not necessarily see it that way. Dave and I, we have looked at many item 19s, and we find that in general, most of them will certainly show you the top level numbers, what your gross sales are across the board. Many times those are broken out into different groups of franchisees, especially for a more established brand. In general, most franchises will only report for those that have been in business 1 year or more. Because you have to realize your first year, you're ramping up and everybody's going to be in a different situation. So being in year 1 year plus, almost always they'll report that data, but you may see data from 1 year to 5 and 5 years to 10 and 10 years plus, and you can then see any trends or anomalies across that data. They can also break it down by region. How does the West compared to the mid of the country or the East Coast? So every franchise can decide how they want to report that. And we have found it very interesting and insightful sometimes in helping our candidates understand how those numbers are presented.
Right. Are there any exclusions that are common in item 19 in the FDD?
Usually, if there are any exclusions, then it must be disclosed. That's the whole point, is that they have to be open and honest, and they can't kind of hide something underneath the rug, which is great. But if they are intentionally excluding something, then you'll see it denoted in the small print.
Right. So loop that back to our statement about evaluating other types of businesses, maybe businesses that aren't franchise opportunities, existing sale businesses. There's nothing there governing those numbers. It's up to you to prove those numbers yourself, meaning that there's no governing body overseeing those, and there's no truth in in the creation and showing of those numbers in any documents provided by the other party. So again, when evaluating franchises, the nice thing about that is that this is all governed by the FTC, and these numbers have to be validated before they can end up in the item 19. What other business opportunities out there give you that opportunity to really know how a business is doing? Looping that back to return on investment, it goes back to the question that we talked about in the beginning. How much can I make? Right? You want to know if you're going to invest a certain amount of money, when are you going to get your investment back? And you can use our return on investment calculator, take the numbers from an FDD, plug those in there, and you can find out I'm going to break even in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years based on the numbers they're providing me. What a great way to be able to do your due diligence on a business opportunity. So Stacy, I think that's really good overall information. Are there any additional comments or advice you'd like to give to our listeners about the FDD item 19?
Of course. This item can seem very overwhelming. In almost all cases, it's going to be the longest section of the FDD, and it's absolutely one that you need to pay particular attention to. So as Dave was saying, you're going to see the numbers, and there's nowhere else that you can get this information in other types of business models. And you can certainly use it with our ROI calculator and to build your pro forma. But what you can also do is use it when you get to the stage of validation and start talking to other franchisees and ensure that those numbers are valid and making sense. And as you build your pro forma and business plan, you'll feel a lot more confident in plugging those numbers in.
Absolutely. And just adding to real quickly, Stacy, one of the things you want to do is to validate these numbers when talking to the other franchisees as part of your due diligence process. It's going to make you feel a whole lot more comfortable that what you're seeing in that FDD document item 19 ties in with what these operators are giving you as far as their own personal information, so that you have the best opportunity to evaluate whether or not this is the right franchise or business opportunity for you.
What I want to make clear to our audience is that item 19, it's just a representation, although it is real, accurate information, but it is not a guarantee. So if you see that average sales in a certain franchise you're looking at are $1.7 million, it doesn't mean that you in particular are going to make $1.7 million. It's not a guarantee. All right. So that's why, as Dave has been talking about, make sure you do your validation and work with someone such as us who can help you dive deeper, understand the numbers, understand how you make money. And Dave and I kind of laugh because we have a statement that we always share with our candidates, which is gross is for vanity, net is for sanity, right?
Oh, that's a fact.
Gross is for vanity, net is for sanity. So some franchises, they'll focus so much on the top line. You can make $3.5 million, right? But what's going into your pocket? So always try and get those net numbers. Many times franchises do share that in item 19, and sometimes not. Sometimes you have to figure that out on your own.
All right, so final disclosures. We are not franchise attorneys.
Or accountants.
And as part of your due diligence, if you are not a financial person, please seek advice from professional advisors such as an accountant or a franchise attorney when evaluating any legal document, including the franchise disclosure document, item 19. That's it for today's episode. We're on FDD item 19. We'll be moving on to 2021, 22, and the final 123. So for those of you following us through the other episodes, hang in there with us. If you like our content, please subscribe here, and we will catch you on the next episode of What's Your Next.
Bye.